podcast. This week for UFC Orlando, a 15-fight card here, headlined by Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, taking on Kevin Holland. Striker's delight here at welterweight. We do stay at 170 for the co-main event as well. We have former champion Rafael dos Anjos taking on Bryan Barberena, who is never in a boring fight. Huge slate of fights here for us on Saturday, and we only got 2 cards left here for the end of the year. So do us a quick favor, man. Like the video, sub to the channel if you haven't. It does really help us out, and we do really appreciate it. A week off between these fight cards, some time for Thanksgiving. And last week's card was supposed to be headlined by Sergey Spivak and Derek Lewis before Lewis was pulled, about halfway through the prelims before everybody was finding out. But new main event ended up producing a finish. Good night of bets for both of us. We had some good reads. Both finished out in the green, and hopefully we can continue on to round out the year.
As I've said before, if we're both in the green, and never mind wearing the casual cap, we take a look at both of our cards, nearly a clean sweep for both of us. You had 3 straight picks with Miles Johns, Tercios, and Highstand. I think they were all pretty good picks. You ended up plus 3.15 on the straight pick section. Then you also had a parlay, maybe a little greasier than you'd like, but also came out. It was a plus money parlay, so you expect a little bit of sketch. You ended up the night plus 3.19 unit with a 66% return on investment. Going over to my card, the one play that got us both was the Cutelaba wins in round 1, and it was almost there, man. He did the 70 IQ, shot for the takedown when he had him hurt. It just never came to fruition. I had the under in the Fialho versus Salikov fight. Went a little bit longer than I wanted, but to get plus money on that under 2.5, I think that was a surefire hit. And then I also had a parlay with Tercios and Highstand. We were on a lot of the same spots, and it ended up paying out for us. I ended up plus 2.58 units with a 73% return on investment. And like you said, let's keep the ball rolling into this week. Our main event takes place in the welterweight division, where we see Stephen Wonderboy Thompson taking on Big Mouth Kevin Holland. I'm absolutely here for this karate versus kung fu matchup. Both guys established themselves as top strikers in the division, and I think the matchmakers are giving us guaranteed fireworks here. This is a tough fight for me to take a non-biased approach before diving into the breakdown. If you've listened to us before, you know that we feel like any Wonderboy fight that takes primarily on the feet is a surefire win for him. And technically speaking, I do think that Wonderboy's best striker pound for pound in the UFC. And even though I believe that, I have to recognize that Thompson can't maintain that striking edge forever. And he's approaching 40 years of age in a division that's not very forgiving, especially when you don't wear damage well. Wonderboy's striking success, it comes from a variety of techniques involving timing and footwork to set up his strikes, whereas Kevin brings a much more unpredictable, movement. He utilizes his physical advantages much more. And there's a specific fight I want to touch on that made me weary of betting Wonderboy, and it's not just because we saw it live in Nashville, but it's the Thompson versus Pettis fight, and specifically that finishing shot. Wonderboy was beating him soundly before that, and then a super unpredictable Superman punch off the cage catches Thompson right on the button. And I do see that the length of Holland, the erratic striking he offers, it's very likely that we see him catch Thompson over 25 minutes because he is the type of fighter to put himself in that situation where he doesn't mind taking a shot if he can deliver one. Even if Wonderboy is winning the majority of the exchanges, it just takes one slip. Wonderboy isn't necessarily known for his KO power, but he's definitely capable of landing clean shots and can knock anybody out. So if both these guys are standing striking for 25 minutes, I think it leaves the question of who will get knocked out as opposed to if somebody's going to get knocked out. I just think that it's definitely going to take place on the feet. Striking battle. I edge Kevin Holland here, but that's only because Wonderboy's depleting and we've never seen him outstruck, which is why it's tough for me to bet against him here.
Yeah, picking either side of money line here is super difficult for me as well. Both guys got to be extremely happy that they have another striker in front of them. Both have struggled badly in their losses with the grappling in their last few. But you do want to lean more toward giving Kevin Holland that pass, who was up at 85, taking on real dominating wrestlers like Brunson, Vittori, and even, Hamzat. You talked about some of the physicals, 10 years younger. Wonderboy's, I think, 40 in February. Kevin Holland, 10 years younger, man. And clearly the one that looks like he's improving at this point in his career, and the career's, trajectory is going in different directions. And I don't want to take anything away from Bilal, from Burns. I think they're absolute killers, but to me, it does look like Wonderboy's lost a bit of a step, looking a little bit slower these days. But it is hard to deny that if anybody wants to stand there and just strike with Wonderboy, he is going to make it close 100% of the time. Very tricky puzzle to solve. Good footwork. Pretty good defensively. Has that nice side kick to kind of keep you at range. Right off the flop, I wasn't as confident as Holland as a lot of these other people who are hitting his money line. But undefeated at 170, has a finish over Jeff Neal prior to the UFC, and he's going to be 3 inches taller, 6-inch reach advantage here, and that's something Wonderboy's not used to. Wonderboy is a 6-foot welterweight, something he's usually having the length, the size, and range on, and I think this is actually the first time he's fought someone taller than he is. My one knock on Holland, it's almost how serious he takes his approach. Whether it's in the training or even mid-fight when he knows he can't stuff these takedowns, so he's just talking to DC and cage side, and jokingly retired after getting paid from Hamzat fight. So it's like, I don't want to go in here and lay a bunch of chalk on Kevin either. But if you want what I think is the most likely thing to happen, I think Kevin is the one that's going to catch Wonderboy over the 25 minutes and probably find a club and sub or something like he did over Cowboy Oliveira. Kevin Holland's going to be the pick. I don't have a money line bet, but I do have a prop here that I'm really excited to talk about.
I'm glad you touched on him at 170 having a ton of success. He's also had a ton of success against older opponents. 8 of his last 9 opponents that he's been younger than, he's got to win. And I think that it's going to play a factor in this where we've talked about Wonderboy kind of aging.
We stay at 170 for our co-main event where we have Rafael dos Anjos taking on Bryan Barberena. Back to welterweight for RDA here, who did go back to 155, looking to make another little tighter run, but coming off his round 5 stoppage loss to Fiziev, I think, showing us time and time again that weight cut to 55 for him, especially at this point in his career, just too much for him and really does hinder his performance. And not to mention the lightweight prospects right now that you would get matched up with are just absolute killers. I've been a front runner of RDA, really having success if the UFC would have ever made a 165-pound division. I think he would have had real ton of success there, and looking at him here, he swelled to the biggest favorite of the card, and rightfully so. I don't really know what advantages Barberena has other than being a bit bigger, a bit younger. RDA's fought at welterweight before, fought much more elite welterweights than Bryan Barberena, and then I don't really know how much stock in younger Bryan Barberena is, because this dude has been in absolute wars. He's got a ton of fight miles on him. You talk about the severe injuries and surgeries he's gone through that's put him on layoffs. I get RDA being this big of a favorite. And I think there's clear ways for him to win. I think he's the much cleaner technical striker. I think he's a much faster striker. I think his leg kicks are going to just absolutely debilitate Barberena's legs. And then I think he would be absolutely stupid if he does not mix in a takedown. You look at Barberena, who's rocking a 55% takedown defense, taken down 5 times by Matt Brown, 4 times by Darian Weeks, 8 times by Jason Witt, 5 times by Anthony Ivy. And then you look over at RDA, who averages over 2 takedowns per 15 minutes. That's in a 30-fight sample size in the UFC. So it's not like I'm asking him to do something that he doesn't typically do here. Barb, a little bit on that, Legends kill streak right now, looking to kind of take out his third, just coming off wins over Robbie Lawler and Matt Brown. And, I look at the fight with Robbie Lawler, and, I was on Barberena to get the finish there, but even in round 1 and some of round 2, Robbie's not looking bad. Robbie puts him on the back foot, lands over 80 significant strikes on him, and sticks him up against the fence. And if I see that fight with RDA, I think RDA is going to tear him up, find the takedown even easier. I get the minus 500. I think you and I have got him both parlayed. One of my most confident pit reads this week.
Yeah, man. So I think this is the easiest matchup for RDA since Tarek Saffiedine. I know that Barberena seemingly turned that corner on this 3-fight win streak, but like you said, doesn't really hold much weight. You got a debutant in Darian Weeks at the time, and then the number 1 and number 2 oldest fighters on the welterweight roster right now. Like you said, RDA competing at this higher level, it's much easier to come up and fight Barberena at 170 than try and fight Armin or Demir or whoever you get as your next one at 155. Even though I do think there's a distinct skill gap between RDA and Barberena, we do have to recognize Barberena is not a small welterweight. I've seen him take a ton of beatings in the UFC, but he's never been undersized, and I think that could actually be a problem for RDA. who truthfully doesn't have the strongest resume at welterweight. Sure, he's fought all of the higher guys, but his only win he did beat Robbie. I've had problems with Robbie's size at welterweight his whole entire career, though, and he did beat Magny. But outside of that, he's lost every single high matchup at welterweight, and it's not necessarily something that I like to see him going back up. The damage you talked about Barberena absorbing his over his UFC career, similar to Darren Elkins, man. He's someone whose main fighter attributes are not something you want to have to rely on every fight. Gritty, tough, shows a lot of heart. I know he's only 33 years old, but as we've seen, he can get finished now. And even his win against Matt Brown, he's fighting nearly to the death with him. Like you said, I'm honestly surprised he was even able to come back and compete at a high level with the back surgery a couple years back. They said he got over 250 pounds during that recovery, and knowing the damage that he had sustained, I just don't think that this is a good matchup for him. They've ran out of old-timers to give Barberena, and while RDA is no spring chicken, he's still competing at a level that Barberena had never competed at in his career. With the size advantage Barberena has, I wouldn't be surprised to see RDA look to level change early and often. He'll have a speed advantage in the striking department that I think will set up those shots for takedowns, and because it's only 3 rounds, I feel confident that RDA can keep that pace to stifle the offensive attacks that Bryan throws. I expect him to control the pace from start to finish, and although I do kind of question Barberena's durability at this point in his career, I'm not sure that RDA has the power at 170 to exploit that. So if he is going to get the finish, I expect it to come in the grappling department. But outside of that, I've got RDA by decision, 30-27, maybe even a 30-26, and I think he probably covers that price tag. For my fight of the night, I've picked Jack Hermansson taking on Roman Dolidze. Originally scheduled to be Jack Hermansson versus Derek Brunson. Brunson ended up having an injury and Roman stepped in to fight. Jack's coming in as the 2-1 favorite here, which I found really surprising considering the way Roman has been winning. He's coming off of 2 first-round finishes over Kyle Dawkins and Phil Hawes. And honestly, I can remember telling myself that he would be severely overpriced in his next bout. That just isn't the case here. Even with the success Roman's had in his UFC run, he leaves plenty to be desired when he's in there. From asking his coach mid-fight if he should submit to his opponent, to having such low output that he's only eclipsed 50 strikes 1 time in his 6 UFC fights so far. Jack, on the other hand, he's a volume machine, on the feet having more than doubled the highest amount thrown by Roman in 3 of his last 4 bouts. And we've seen a steady progression in his game as his career is mapped out in the UFC. Before his most recent 5-fight run, I would have considered Jack to be a primary grappler. He has the amazing ability to wrap up the submissions in a blink of an eye. And sure, he's always had power on the feet, but he's developed his game at this point in his career to take less damage and get the win without needing the finish. I think that this fight could definitely play out bull versus matador. Roman being the bull here, he looks to push forward, get his grappling going, close that gap. Good luck trying to implement that on Jack, though. After watching Jack perform against Hamzat in the wrestling match, it showed me 2 things. Jack can deal with that early pressure, and he has amazing cardio that can make up for any deficiencies that, it eventually stopped that forward progress of Hamzat and kind of created a stalemate in the grappling. On a full camp, I'd be a little bit more tempted to bet Roman in this spot, as I do think he'll be able to make it interesting early with the heavy power and the perceived size advantage. But Jack has been preparing for a fight with Brunson, and I already felt like Jack had the cardio advantage, the striking advantage, and the wrestling chops to negate the forward grappling pressure of Roman. I always kind of find it interesting when I see a 185-pound fight at plus money to go to not go the distance. It's my favorite to hit. Jack has more paths to victory, and if any of his last fights are an indication of how he plans to progress in his career, I do think it's highly likely that we see Jack just soundly outpoint Roman on all 3 judges' scorecards. But I'm not just completely convinced, and it's possible that I find a play on the under here. Roman known to slow down, and Jack could wrap up anything at any point. That being said, I got Jack by decision as my most likely path to victory.
You and I see this fight a whole lot of the same, man. Last time out against Chris Curtis, I thought Jack looked very, very good. You know, what I was convinced of, this guy's going to go out here and wrestle, didn't even need a single takedown. You know, completely outstruck him from the outside, more than doubled him up in strikes. The jab looked good. I thought his just overall striking game in general looked much more improved. And you're right, he's a much better striker than Roman, and similar path to victory here. And I bring up a lot of the similar points. I think physically, I think Jack can match Roman in a lot of the physicality stuff. And while Roman may be the better submission grappler, I think Jack is the better wrestler, the one with the better top control. And if the fight hits the mat, that's the one I think is going to wind up on top. And the one that I think has a superior gas tank, whether Roman was on a full camp or not. Now the fact that it's on a short notice, 100% lean toward Jack. But it does make playing a minus 175, a minus 200 money line kind of tricky when you see a guy coming off back-to-back first-round knockouts. And Dawkins, I didn't really expect that one, but I did take him as my dog of the week against Phil Hall. I thought he really could make that fight close. I thought he could match Phil Hall's physically. I did not expect him to go out there and hurt Phil Hall's on the feet, make him shoot a takedown, completely nullify that wrestling by just ripping his knee apart, and then finish him on the feet. Roman looked very, very good, man. And coming out of Extreme Couture, I think we're seeing a more serious approach, a better Roman each time out, and it's what's kept me off the Hermansson money line. But early on, it could be close. I think come later, round 2, round 3, we do start to see Jack's cardio and volume take over. Bit of a too big of a bite for Roman here on short notice. Jack by decision, my pick as well. For my fight of the night, I'm going with Tai Tuivasa taking on Sergey Pavlovich, the lone set of big boys on the card here this weekend. And at least it's better than old Chase Sherman versus Waldo Acosta here. UFC really treating us here. I'm excited about this fight. Tuivasa, partly because of the entertainment factor, the shoey has went from being cut by the UFC to now in like the top heavyweights, on the roster, headlining events, big time pay-per-views. But I will say I think the guy's a little bit lucky to have gotten here. I think he's a very, very one-dimensional fighter and just really knows how to do one thing. It's meet in the middle and throw down. And even the shots that he's landed, I don't really see a lot of technicality behind of him. But he is fast for his size, man. And in tight, he's got good elbows. And on a boxer like Sergey, the calf kick of Tai Tuivasa, that it's been a big weapon for him in the past, it could be something he goes to here as well. But when I look on that run that, was stopped by Cyril Gane, Struve, Hunsucker, Hardy, they're not in the UFC anymore. The wins over Lewis and Sakai just aren't really aging very well at this point. I still give it to him. He's looked good, but the Cyril Gane fight, we're talking 3 months away, and I was thinking that would probably been a mandatory 6-month medical suspension. He was hurt a few times, eventually knocked out. I think it's just too quick of a turnaround to, I think the chin's going to be tested again here by Pavlovich, who, while only being an inch taller, has a 9-inch reach advantage on Tai. Big threat also on the feet. I think he's got the better technical boxing, and I think his hands are almost equally as fast, man. He does a really good job of feigning. The way he was getting Derek Lewis to bite on all the shots, the way he turns his overhand right into an uppercut on Shamil, it's beautiful. I think his striking is very slick, and when guys want to rush him, he's able to kind of step back and hit that counter shot on you. Both guys are fish out of water on their back. I don't see any grappling being involved in this fight. I just see Tai getting frustrated at range really early, trying to close the distance, sloppy. And I think he gets cracked again. So I got early on Pavlovich at minus 160. He's now minus 200 on the same book. I've got 2 units on him there. But bodies are hitting the floor here, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I was a little surprised this wasn't co-main, But like you said, these are 2 heavyweights that primary path to victory is on the feet, stand and bang.
Knockouts.
And you know that they're going to come in to entertain us. So great fight to touch on for sure. For my fighter to watch, I am taking Tracy Cortez. She's one of the more surprising fighters on the roster that have gone undefeated since entering the UFC. Cortez is 4-0 since winning her Contender Series debut over future UFC fighter Maria Agapova, who was undefeated at the time. And Cortez has definitely established herself as one of the more prominent primary grapplers in the division. She's averaging over 2.5 takedowns landed per 15 minutes. And most of her game revolves around getting the fight to the mat and winning minutes before ever really looking for that finish, which, while it might not be the most entertaining for fights, she has found a winning recipe, man. The reason I picked her as my fighter to watch is because of the step up she's taking here against Amanda Ribas. Ribas is another younger prospect, under 30, in the division that the UFC has pushed up the rankings a little faster than they should have. Ribas is now 5-2 in the UFC, with her 2 losses coming to former title challenger Caitlin Chookagian and future title challenger Marina Rodriguez. So nothing to hang her head about. As I scanned down Ribas's record, I tried to find someone with a similar game plan as Cortez, and I think Verna Jandiroba is a decent fight to pull from. Ribas struggled early with the takedown against Verna, but realized how she can keep the fight on the feet and eventually win the fight. She's essentially going to have the same fight here with Tracy. So Cortez, with her relentless takedown pressure, it'll certainly test the defense of Ribas. But I also want to point out that this isn't the Ribas that was fighting Paige Van Zandt. Ribas, I think she's linked up with Mackenzie Dern down in Brazil, found that juice because her physique is better than ever right now. The line is continuing to move towards pick'ems as the week progresses. Tracy opened as the dog, but money is coming in on her. And at this point in her career, I can't find it in me to bet Cortez with this step up in competition, but a clean win here would wipe away any of the potential concerns I have for her moving forward, which is why I've chosen her as my fighter to watch.
Yeah, I definitely think that Ribas is a good grappler because if I remember correctly, I think all of round 1, she took Choop down and took that round. And I think all of round 1 against Marina Rodriguez, she took her down and was on top too. I was originally on Tracy Cortez, but yeah, the more I've looked into it, I think Ribas is a really good fighter to watch this weekend. For me, Nico
Cortez is my fighter to watch.
Cortez fighter to watch. My eyes will be on her too, don't worry. Fighter to watch, Nico Price. The guy's been out of action here for a year now. Got 6 mouths back home to feed, so it was a matter of time before this savage is back here in the cage. For certain he's never going to touch probably the top 15 in this division, but he's one of those guys that you don't miss a Nico Price fight. He's always in wars, killed or be killed. Willing to eat 3 or 4 just to land 1. He's rocking that negative striking differential, which is always a concern for someone who likes to duke it out on the feet. And it also worries me when you're fighting someone as long and rangy like Phil Rowe. You coming back off of a layoff, trying to get that timing on someone who can match you in length and size. I think it's a bit tricky, and you usually beat Rowe by taking him down and neutralizing him, and that's just never really been in the game plan for Nico, but the dude is dangerous everywhere. You see 2 finishes on bottom, the hammer fist to Randy Brown, the up kick on James Vick. He's just a guy that you can never count out of the fight, but for a few reasons, man, the layoff and even the betting line. Nico Price was all the way up at plus money at one time. Now he's like minus 140. It's all over the place. I'm curious to see if he is over the hill or if this prospect's just not on his level yet. So Nico Price, fighter to watch this week.
For my dog of the week, tough pick for me. I think that this technically it's pick'ems, but she will eventually be a dog. It's going to be Amanda Ribas for me. I do think that she's proven herself against much higher level competition. She does have the jiu-jitsu that I think could definitely cause problems, even if Cortez does have success getting the fight to the mat. And if it stays on the feet, I think that Ribas has the size and length and good enough striking to stop the forward progress of Tracy Cortez. And Cortez hasn't lost in the UFC yet. So I do think that this is just a huge step up in competition. It's probably a great opportunity for Cortez to kind of hit a wall and then go back, reassess her game, and add to it. Her being so young right now, she still hasn't really faced the difficulties that I'd like her to see up until this point. So I'm on Amanda Ribas, especially if it gets into the plus money. Right now we're seeing some minus 105s. So yeah, Ribas as my dog. Not super confident, but I do think that the price is right on this one.
I'm not very confident about many underdogs this week. Probably won't have any on my card. I think the favorites come through at a high clip, but Marcelo Rojo, man, that is a guy who is 100% going to fight for your money. The guy was sitting at plus 160 one point in the week and is now at plus 130, so other people seeing sort of the same thing. He always comes to bring it. He is an absolute handful for anybody early on. Was looking good against Jourdain early. I think like almost all of his finishes are in round 1, and I could see this plus 130 being gone after round 1. But I will have to say I'm equally as excited to see Francis Marshall, a 23-year-old prospect like that to look very promising on the Contender Series. I think he's the bigger guy plus having the grappling advantage and being so young probably has the cardio advantage. I wish Marcelo Rojo was not going up to 45 to take this one, or was it typically a 45er in the past. I probably would have gotten to the window on him as he comes out hot. To have an underdog like this that has finishing potential, has 18 more professional fights, has been in there with Jourdain and Phillips. Even at plus 130, I think he's going to go out there, and even at 145 is going to give this 23-year-old a tough-ass debut.
For my prop to watch, I am taking Jonathan Pierce by submission versus Darren Elkins. It's sitting at plus 400. Darren Elkins is going to put himself in a position to get submitted. That's his thing. He takes damage really well. I think that when the fight's standing, Jonathan Pierce can touch him up, just being the far bigger dude. Jonathan Pierce is 6 foot, 145 pounder. I mean, he's the biggest dude in the division. You know that Darren Elkins is going to look to get this fight on the ground, and Jonathan Pierce has the grappling chops to, I think, negate the wrestling of Darren Elkins, or at least create scrambles where I think we're going to see Elkins in some unfavorable positions, and Jonathan being so much bigger, I do think that he's going to have the strength and just the overall submission skills to wrap up something here. And at plus 400, that is more than good enough for me to take a shot at.
And not only is he the biggest in the division, probably one of the best gas tanks in the division as well. Jonathan Pierce is a damn good fighter. For my prop of the week, Levy versus Valdez, under 2.5, sitting at minus 190. I think it actually opened at minus 155. I missed that a little bit, but even at minus 190, I still think there's some value on it. When you look historically at the records, it's Levy that has the mixed bag of results. You see him going to the scorecards a little bit more than you would like to see playing a line like this. But when he does finish the fights, it's exactly how I think he could finish this fight. So when he has that grappling edge and he uses it, he tends to submit the guys pretty early. And I think with the pressure of Valdez coming forward, he's going to be forced to probably, he's got a good karate style stance. I think he can land a knockout blow on Valdez, but with that forward pressure, I think he's going to be forced to kind of use the grappling to negate it. And I think the submission is going to come from Levy probably round 2 once that cardio of Valdez takes a nosedive. But if Valdez has any success, it's always inside the distance. 90% of his fights have finished under 1.5 rounds. He's never seen the judges' scorecards and just really knows one way to fight. Come forward, force the boxing, and sling leather. And if you watch that fight with Matt Frivola back, you will lay minus 190 on under 2.5 all day long. I think he's very sloppy on some of his exchanges. And we should have trouble against a lot more technical Natan Levy here. So I was trying to look at Natan Levy all week, but I think violence is just the better side here. And under 2.5, one of my good prop plays this week.
For my best bet of the card, I'm actually going with a parlay for this one. It is Rafael Dos Anjos and Mateus Nicolau, both to win. I put 2.5 units on it. I just don't see how their opponents get this done. For Mateus Nicolau, I think Matt Schnell is a KO or bust here, and Mateus Nicolau has made a UFC career off of being one of the most defensively sound fighters on the roster. I do think that it'll be a bull versus matador the entire time, with Nicolau sticking him with sharp jabs the entire time. And then with Dos Anjos versus Barberena, we've touched on it a little bit already, but RDA's just levels above skill-wise than Bryan Barberena, and I can't see the size being enough of a factor to get the win over RDA. So both those guys to win. If you get it anywhere under minus 150, I think that it's an excellent play.
Got the same exact parlay on my card as well, man. I see paths to victory for both those guys, clear as day all day. Best bet for me, I'm going to go Kevin Holland, finish only, or scorecards no action, minus 175. I don't really have to go into depth about the fight. That's our main event. But this really isn't too far off from Kevin Holland's money line at the moment. If you ask me who has the finishing upside in this fight, I think it's Kevin Holland. Wonderboy is not really getting it done inside the distance lately. Doesn't have a finish in like 6 years. The last one coming over the shell of himself, Johnny Hendricks, But I do know that if anyone plans to stand there for 25 minutes and just strike with Wonderboy, it has very much potential to be close. And if I do see this fight going to decision, I don't know if I want a minus 150 Kevin Holland ticket in my hands. Judging has been spotty lately. Wonderboy is a very tricky puzzle to solve, and can kind of get you staring, get you drawn into a low volume affair. So I did got 2 units on Kevin Holland finish only, as he's the one with the finishing upside here. And if it goes to decision, I want no part of that.
We move on to the quick pick section of the night, where we start off in the women's strawweight division, where we see Yasmin Jauregui taking on Estela Nunez. I think this fight's going to be absolute fireworks. I gotta play on the under, and I think these girls are going to duke it out. However, Jauregui seems to be the far more efficient striker, so I've got her to win.
Yasmin seems like the real deal, man. I see a bright future for her. She's going to be my pick as well, and I've got her parlayed throughout the card. Francis Marshall versus Marcelo Rojo. I know Marcelo was my dog, but I do not like him being at 45. I do not like his cardio, taking nosedives and losing in round 3 numerous times. I see potential in the 23-year-old. I'm going to take Francis Marshall.
I'll stick with the UFC newcomer as well, and Francis Marshall. Moving up to the lightweight division, Natan Levy versus Gennaro Valdez. I'm going to be going with Levy here.
Yeah, I'm going with Natan Levy as well. Got to play on that under. Tracy Cortez, Amanda Ribas, a fight that honestly, man, looking at it, should be higher up on this card. I think this is a pretty high-level fight. I think Tracy Cortez wrestling just might get it done on the scorecards.
Cortez is my fighter to watch, but I do think that Ribas is going to pull this one out here. Just a little bit too much for Cortez at this point in her career. Moving up to featherweight, we have Darren the Damage Elkins taking on Jonathan Pierce. I think Jonathan Pierce is a good parlay piece for this week.
I think I'm going to be on the other. I'm just kidding, man. Yeah, Jonathan Pierce all day. Darren Elkins is a shell of himself at this point. Mark Dicasey versus Michael Johnson. Man, Dicasey seems to be one of the more popular parlay pieces this week. I've yet to get there on him. He's going to be the pick. Michael Johnson's looked like ass lately, so Dicasey's going to be the pick, but minus 300, I don't know, man.
I don't know. A heavy grappler is nothing new for Michael Johnson. I could see him messing up some parlays this week, but I will go with Dicasey. He just has the clearer path to victory. Right. Staying at 155, we got 2 old-timers in Clay Guida versus Scott Holtzman. Hoping to get plus money on Holtzman. Didn't happen. I've got Holtzman as my pick.
I almost don't care about the plus money. When I see a guy who's just fought Benil Dairouche and Mateusz Gamrot and is now getting Clay Guida, I think this could be a buy low spot that Scott Holtzman really comes through, man. He's going to be the pick for me. Angela Hill taking on Emily Ducote. Really did no due diligence for this fight. Angela Hill I know is going to make it close on the scorecard, so I don't care to bet Emily Ducote, even though she's going to be the pick.
Emily Ducote is your pick. I think I'm going to actually go against you again on this women's fight. I'm going to go Angela Hill here. I think that she's getting kind of disrespected here at this point in her career. Moving up to welterweight, we have Nico Price taking on Phil Rowe. Ooh, I don't know. I think I'm going to go with Phil Rowe. Yeah. I think Nico Price has passed it. So
I think he's passed it as well, and I think getting someone long and rangy like that's just not good for the comeback. Moving on to our main card, Eric Anders versus Kyle Dawkins opening it up. I don't like, the Kyle Dawkins coming back from the knockout and all that stuff. And to be honest with you, I think it's going to be a whole lot of clinch fighting up against the cage that I can't really get a clear read on. I'm going to go Eric Anders, better athlete, more powerful, stronger in the clinch. I'll take a dog shot there.
Sure. All right. I'm going to stick with Kyle Dawkins here. He at least took off 6 months after that.
Right.
So, I don't know. I've got Dawkins here. Moving on, staying at 185, Jack Hermansson versus Roman Dolidze. I've got Jack Hermansson here. I think he'll win a decision.
Yeah, we touched on this fight already. Jack Hermansson for me as well. Tuivasa versus Sergey should be the co-main, man. This is an absolute killer fight. I do think Sergey gets it done under 1.5.
These two are going to bang in the middle. Yeah. Coin flip for me. I'll take the guy with the longer reach, though, in Sergey Pavlovich. Moving down to the men's flyweight division, Mateusz Nicolau versus Matt Schnell. I think Nicolau's going to roll this Saturday.
I think Nicolau's going to roll as well. And while I do think decision, he's got like 6 knockdowns since coming back to the UFC. And, Schnell's chin is coming off of a war, and his chin has already kind of been spotty in the past. So
He got knocked out 3 times in that fight.
he really did, man. I think Nicolau's a solid play, and I'm going to pair that with Rafael dos Anjos in the co-main event. I don't really see a path to victory here for Bryan Barberena. I think he's just outmatched skill-wise everywhere.
Yep, I'm going to have to agree with you. RDA's the pick for me as well. And in the main event, Stephen Thompson versus Kevin Holland.
Tricky, man.
It is tricky. I don't know. I think I'm going to, since I don't have a play on it, I think I'm going to go with Thompson and just continue with, if it's a stand-up fight on the feet, Thompson's going to get it done. But I would not be surprised with how he's been eating shots recently if Kevin Holland sees it inside the distance, which would hit your bet.
Yeah, Kevin Holland finish only is how I'm going to play this fight, but these December cards, Wonderboys came through for us before. I'll side with Wonderboy with you, man. I think it's going to be a close striking battle, and I really do think I have a good potential of just seeing my bet nullified when Wonderboy wins a decision here. So I'm going to go Stephen Wonderboy with you, man. Appreciate you guys tuning in and watching. We got 15 fights this Saturday going down in Orlando, Florida. Only this one and 2 more fight cards left this year. Hopefully we can both finish out some good cards. We'll see you guys next week.
Peace.